Hello. Thank you so much, Symphony Lyricist, for being here today. I am so elated to have you on the podcast, Her Business, Her Voice. Today, I want to dive deep into talking about wellness for the Black and Brown woman entrepreneur. And so that's exactly why I have you here today. But first, I would love if you could share your journey with those who do not know you.
Well, most certainly. And thank you for inviting me on this podcast. I am delighted to be a guest. So, a little bit about me and this journey. I didn't come from a traditional skincare industry, especially so where our methodology is aromasomatic skincare, something that was rooted from my yoga and Reiki journey as a certified practitioner. And it was basically started from the collection of stories and the observations that I made of my clients and what they were impacted with on the day to day, especially dealing with stress. I just basically took those stories, channeled them in to find out what the root was. And it really just came down to just relationship with everything, whether it be relationship with self, as it relates to others. And that's what brought me to basically founding Lotus Flower Apothecary in 2016 with one question I asked, why are we treating pretty much how we look in alignment with how we feel? Two distinct separate things.
Right.
And that's where aromasomatic comes from. It's two action formulas that basically work on the skin and the nervous system at the same time, because that thought of how I look is a big stressor. And we're not realizing that internally, it's like these messages are being sent and then they're showing up on the biggest organ of our bodies, our skin. So it's like living in our minds and having it show up on our skin.
Hmm.
Therefore, we get anxious about how we're looking at people or whatever. So almost a decade later, we opened up our brick and mortar right here in Midtown Atlanta at Colony Square. It's an immersive experience where I walk you through the journey of yourself, through yourself, to yourself, so that you can basically just shine or show up just as
Yeah.
you are. Because many times what I like to say is how you feel shows up on your skin.
So I want to dig a bit deeper because your skincare is so far set apart, which is what made me really excited to speak with you today because of the fact that you deal with two senses that we are dealing with, right? And so can you talk a little bit more to us about that path that you took to decide that you wanted to create your product that touches on like from a somatic piece? And can you share a little bit more? Because some of our listeners may not even know what somatic healing is and what that entails.
Most definitely. So where do I start? So aromasomatic is aroma, whereas we're using scent to basically stimulate the limbic system, or what I like to say, that little part of the brain that's the happy center that is in control of those endorphins, that dopamine, or whatever it may be. And it actually shifts our mood and what we get into. The somatic part is the body. So basically, aromasomatic is just merging those two things. Again, something that's
Mhm.
never been done in the skincare industry, which is all outside.
Yes.
So when skincare usually has a scent to it, which is something that's popular, is lavender. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah, but lavender does more than just smell good. There are medicinal
Mhm.
properties to lavender, especially when it comes to dealing with the skin. So how we approach intersecting it with skincare, it's basically saying, we're going to use the power of essential oils and their medicinal properties. We're going to intersect them with functional safe actives like niacinamide, squalane, hyaluronic acid, all those good things to basically help in elevating mood as we're working on skin ailments. So it's actually what I like to call a slow, intentional process. This is not an overnight process. This is a lifestyle process. So it's after you've seen the dermatologist or
Okay.
um, the med spa to get that treatment to hurry up and get rid of whatever. Then we're taking you on this journey of interjecting this slowly into your day to day life so that it becomes a part of what I don't like to call a routine or a ritual, but more like a mindful moment in which you connect
Mm.
with yourself. So it's not a ritual, but it's a mindful moment where you're tapping in.
Love that you say that because I often, when I'm talking to women in business, I say, like, if you're not well, how can your business be well? And so
Mhm.
I often ask, what are the things that you're doing to like recalibrate yourself and to like just bring you back to like an even kilter? And so I can foresee that if I'm working at my desk and it's been a long day and it's been, as the folks say, like life has been lifing, like
Right.
what would that look like for like one of your products? How would that help me?
That's a great question. So it helps you in two ways. It helps you with number one, setting your day in the morning so
Mm,
that you are, how do you say, not on autopilot
mm,
and ripping and running to get to a place where you may not really be happy to be, right? You're just a part of that day to day and doing the work. So,
mhm.
what it does is it intentionally gets you to pause, check in with yourself, and kind of like a silent way, like you're having this conversation with yourself in the mirror. And of course, we do a bit of that guidance with you with our products. Depending on which blend you choose, would depend on the blend and what it's doing. So, we
Okay.
have some blends that are for anxiety. We have some blends that are for ease, like calming the nervous system or whatever it may be. So, with using those during your AM before you start your day, you're already kind of like setting the tone for how you're going to walk into your day. Now, because it's what I call functional skincare, it's something you can take throughout the day because not only do you use it within your skincare mindful moment, or as some
Mhm.
people say, their rituals or routines, but you actually get to use it out throughout the day on your post points. So when you're at that desk and you're having a moment where you're like, I got these deadlines, I'm working up because I have a long list of tasks that I have to do once I
Me?
get from home. What I like to say is that you can take it and put it on what we call our pulse points in aromatherapy,
Mhm.
which is behind the ears, in the inlets of the wrists, down here, kind of like by the throat chakra, or at the back of the neck. If
Oh.
you really want to stretch it and you do have a work environment that allows you to kind of like build your own kind of like wellness center, I'll say
Mhm.
if you have a diffuser at your desk, you can also drop a couple of drops in your diffuser. So,
Oh,
quite
okay.
essentially, we really do have multifunctional skincare that goes beyond the skin. It can now go into your personal diffuser. I've even seen some people put it in little spray bottles to
Mm.
spray kind of like in the air and around. But that's
Mhm.
just how the versatile the product is. Even though I usually would say those are some, high end kind of like quality ingredients,
Right.
but I get it. People want those ingredients to translate into their everyday as well. So I get it,
Mhm.
when it comes down to sticking them inside your diffuser or using them in another method.
So I want to segue over to this billion-dollar industry that you are in. At
Okay.
least that's what they say, the beauty care. And we know that being a minority woman, it is not easy. So I just would love to know from you, like, what have been some of the challenges you have had to overcome with building your beauty brand?
Oh, wow. That is a great question.
Yeah.
Challenging. I'm not even sure where to start. Let's see. I would say first and foremost, being a first generation founder,
Mhm.
one of the greatest challenges I've faced is just learning business, learning how to create a brand and putting it out there, navigating the ins and outs of what it really takes to build a brand up from the ground up when you don't formally have that background and your network isn't made of that. So overall, I think the industry is very massive. And it sounds like an opportunity until you realize how much of that money is basically concentrated at the top and how
Right.
little of the infrastructure was built with founders like me and mine.
Mhm.
Outside of being a first generation founder, the first challenge was probably legitimacy. Again, when you don't come from beauty or you don't come from those traditional
Yeah.
kind of networks, and when you don't have like a traditional cosmetic chemistry, that's the other thing. I don't have a traditional cosmetic chemistry degree or a manufacturing
Oh.
background or industry connections, right?
Mhm.
This is basically coming from my own passion and my own trial and error working with my clients when I was or still am, a yoga and a Reiki practitioner. I just don't practice it as much. I practice it through the skincare, aromatic skincare. But there are times when people will question, I want to say, whether you belong. I get that a lot. Again, when you don't have those formal backgrounds that people ask about. So I had to earn credibility in a space that was not, how do I say, waiting for me. Every certification, every program, every relationship, I've had to build that from scratch. The second is being ahead of the conversation. When I started talking about the nervous system and skincare in the same breath, people looked at me sideways.
Yeah. 'Cause they
You
don't
know,
understand. I feel
yes.
like it's the educating part, and I'm sure you probably felt this, like you had to educate them because I realized that many folks don't understand how interconnected our body is with our senses.
You would be absolutely right. It is so much of education, of getting people to make that distinction and get them out of uh, the symptom, the outer symptom, when a lot of it is inward. So, intersecting, how do I say, emotional wellness with skincare is a part of neurocosmetics, this new thing that's going around. How your nervous system is and how skincare can basically merge with that. It's not a, neurocosmetics is not a mainstream term yet. Right. Still new, it's still being discussed. So I was sitting in that lane that didn't have a name, which means I had to educate my customer, like you said, before I could ever sell to them. And I'm still educating them, right? Again,
Yeah,
because I'm
yeah.
still on a newfound, so it takes time, it takes money and patience, and it doesn't always feel available when you are self funded. That being said, I think the last thing is, and no one talks about this enough, is being a Black woman founder
Mhm.
in wellness. The wellness industry has has a visibility problem. The faces at the front are not always the ones who built the methodology. So
Not
I
a
had to decide, right, uh, early that I'm not going to shrink my framework to fit in spaces that were not meant for me or designed for me, but instead showing that aromasomatic is not a trend. This is where, data has shown where people are going. They want to feel good um, as they're looking good. But even if they don't look according to, the model whose pictures have been airbrushed or the person who may have, super genes or whatever it may be, they still get to walk around to their own beat in their own body and seeing their body as a work of art. And
no.
protecting that distinction while still growing has been one of the most constant challenges on this journey. None of it broke me, but all it is shaped how I built and how I continue to build.
If you were to go back to the beginning and you could talk to yourself when you first began, what would you say to yourself back then with what you know now? I
Let
know,
me
it's a
see.
good one.
I think maybe to give myself grace,
Mhm.
like a lot of grace. I think I have been really, 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 really hard on myself
Mhm.
about the journey. I'm 10 years in. Still feeling like I haven't even cracked the surface yet.
Yeah.
Again, because there's so much of navigating and getting around when you really haven't had a formal background in anything. So I would tell her, aside from giving herself grace, like to stop trying to figure out everything and just take the step right in front of me or right in front of her. And it'll reveal itself, right? So basically embodying what I want and then letting that without me just match that. I think I've been fighting with it a lot. And I think she would need to hear um, that even though she may feel like an outsider, her background, her story, and the fact that, she didn't traditionally come from this industry and she doesn't have like a formal, business degree or any degree dealing with business,
Yeah.
that actually is what becomes the edge. Like, who is this newcomer who has none of this formal stuff, but she's making waves and just basically saying, don't stand down to try to fit in
Mhm.
because this is the whole product. Like this is what you're leading with. So trust with it. So I would tell her to charge her worth from day one and
Yes.
not, negotiating like, oh, I don't know, compared to another
Mhm.
industry or not what she thinks other people will pay. But this is based on true her cogs, which, what are her calls, what she's putting into it, what it's looking to trigger within the individual. Again, this is on the cusp of neurocosmetics or neuroscience. So
Yeah.
it's still new, it's still talked about but as we talk more and more about wellness, it's surfacing, it's coming up. So I think, you know, letting her know that the work is actually worth it, because every time uh, she is second guessing herself, she's not only training herself that she's not worth it, but she's also putting that out there to the customer that, oh, well, this is where you're at. This is where we're going to keep it.
Yes.
But I would tell her in a sense of, to get in the rooms earlier, to network a lot more, but from a, how do I say it? Not a quiet sense,
Mhm.
but more so from a listening to learn and observe.
Mm.
Because I think many times we go in a room and we want to be heard so much, but sometimes it just takes a bit to just sit back and just listen and hear not the noise, but the conversations that really are going to propel you. So showing up in rooms and not trying to force to be seen,
Oh,
but being seen naturally because there is such a difference. Networking is very transactional. So being seen, but in a very intentional way, is how opportunities find you before you even look for them. So if you go in a room being the loudest, sometimes you're missed because you're drowning out everything around you. When sometimes you can just show up and just say, "Hey, I'm just here. I'm here to listen," or whatever. But I think the hardest one I would want her to know is that doing everything herself and that instinct is going to both save her and slow her death. Like it's a not slow her death, slow her down with not realizing, with not knowing like she doesn't have to do everything herself, that there are other people out there who can definitely be of support and to help her, but to learn the difference between protecting her vision and refusing help. Because
mhm.
I think a lot of times, we get so much of this is me, 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 and I don't want. And I think that comes from a place of maybe abandonment, maybe
Yeah.
trying to get help before and feeling like you're abandoned. So you want to keep everything close wraps. Um, but when you understand that, one is wisdom and the other is wearing the mask of standards. So what I realize is that the business will take everything you give it, but you have
Mhm.
to make sure you're giving from a full place, not what is left over. And after everyone has taken their share. So I think she deserved to hear this way much sooner. So thank you for
Yes.
asking that question. Because she definitely built something worth it either way. Oh no, no problem, no problem.
I wanted to dive a little bit into what you said about protecting the vision because you said for her to know the difference between protecting the vision and being okay with, having help or delegating. So,
Mm.
when do you know it's about, because I think that's profound. When do you know that it's okay to like relinquish and let go versus when you have to protect the vision?
Mm. I want to say I think it really starts with trusting you. And in order to trust you, you have to get very grounded in who you are, what you have, and what you're trying to do for your audience, for society. And
Hmm.
I think that lives within not just the mission, but the vision. And I think sometimes as we're going through the entrepreneurial journey, sometimes we forget that. We forget what we're really doing this for. Uh, that being said, I had to learn the difference between my vision and my ego because they can look identical from the inside.
Wait. How so?
How does the vision and the ego
Look identical.
look identical? So, piggybacking on what I said before, which was like, you've taken so much time to build this,
Mhm.
to almost where it becomes proprietary. But in this industry, we're all sourcing from the same place. There are a
Right.
million ideas a mile a minute. So,
Mhm.
there's how do I say it? There's a huge distinction between, hey, this is my vision and I want to be able to share it with the world versus this is mine. I don't want anybody to have it. Yeah, I want you to pay
Yes.
me for it, but I don't want. So that's like the
Mhm.
huge distinction between those two.
Gotcha.
So you want to make sure that it's not so much of you holding on to it that you almost basically hinder yourself from
Mhm.
really exceeding, right? And we see this in kind of like the beauty, skincare, and cosmetic industry where
Mm.
someone may come out with something and it may seem similar, but I always think it's about the approach and
Uh-huh.
what you really want people to get, to get from it. So protecting the vision is just holding the standard for
Mm.
what you've developed, the why behind the product, the feeling the brand creates, the integrity of the methodology. That is non-negotiable.
Mhm.
And nobody gets to touch that. That is the thing that I built in the dark before anyone was watching. Before there was a boutique or a customer or a name for what I was doing, that part stays with me. So aromasomatic skincare or aromasomatic is in the process of being trademarked because
Okay.
that is again a new term, but
Right.
it still sits within the neuroscience kind of like sector where again it's being discovered, but people are taking an approach. Well, what does that really mean? So
Mhm.
I went through kind of like the painstaking way of really breaking that down, as I said it earlier.
Yeah.
But now a little bit more of the distinction is in execution. So execution can be shared of what I was referencing earlier. And for a
Okay.
long time, I don't think I knew that difference immediately when I first started. Because truly, like I said, pretty much you'll see almost the same thing, but it's about how you're executing, how you are creating community out, around it
Mhm.
versus I'm just here to
Right.
just throw out another product or whatever.
Mhm.
I would reduce something a team member did, not because it was wrong, but because it was not how I would have done it. Um,
Mm.
and I had to sit with that because if the outcome serves the customer and honors the brand, my fingerprints do not have to be on every single piece of it So again, that's that part of letting go of being in control for every single element. And the shift started when I started asking a different question. Instead of what I've done it this way, I started asking, does this move us forward without compromising who we are? And if the answer is yes, I let it go. I let them run with it. I feel like your job as a CEO is to hold the container,
Mm.
not feel every inch of it yourself. That's the quickest way to burn out. And that's what I'm looking to turn around. I'm looking to regulate the nervous system, not keep you in dysregulation because you're trying to control every element. So you know it's time to relinquish when you're at like a bottleneck, when things are sitting still because they're waiting on you, or when your hands are full of tasks that someone else could carry, and your vision is suffering because of it. To your word earlier, knowing how to delegate these things that are like, uh, if it's still true into the core of the brand, this right here is just minor optics. It
Mhm.
doesn't, the perfection thing, that's where that ego comes in, being the perfectionist. It has to be, but guess what? People are going to find something to always talk about. So
Always.
it's like you always have to shatter that. But when you feel it in your body, so because this is about the nervous system, it's all about me listening to my body and seeing where my body is at. And if I'm grounded in it when certain things come along, because your body is going to feel it before words can even explain it. I say, trust that, because that is not fear, that is discernment. So a lot of times we are operating in either a scarcity or survival mode in business. And
Mhm.
so discernment keeps you from losing yourself in the process of growing. And the goal is just to know which one is speaking.
Love that. Thank you so much for explaining that. What is the impact that you want your brand or either yourself to leave on the world? What is the impact that you want to leave?
Let me take it to my vision. I have this
Mm.
vision a to see a society consciously care for themselves, like very intentionally care for themselves, not this surface stuff that we do, especially for social media, but
Mhm.
literally just taking it all off and just saying, I'm here for me and I don't care who sees it. I think that's the issue is it's like when we have to do something for ourselves, we want other people to see it and acknowledge it
Mhm.
or what I call validate it. And it's like, for
Yeah.
what? This is for you. This is your journey. No one else needs to validate how you're feeling. So a part of that is I want people to remember that feeling is data.
Mm.
And we may have been ignoring that data for a long time because we're looking for outside or external validation. You
Yes.
know, we live in a world where it is constantly telling us to push through, perform, produce. But here's the thing, the body keeps the score. It keeps all of it. So I want Lotus Farm Apothecary and our products to be the brand that gave people permission to listen to themselves again, not just their
Ooh.
skin, but what their skin was trying to tell them, right? Because our skin is always trying to tell us something. It's like I tell
Mhm.
women, every month, I think the majority of women, what do we end up with our monthly cycles? A pimple.
Yes.
But what do we try to do? We try to get pimple patches, we try to get facial washes,
Yes. I
something to
used
dry
to.
that pimple up.
I just let it be. I'm like, listen, I'm 40 some years in. We here. We go
Do you
together real
feel
fast.
me, right? Exactly. So that's what I want us as women to know and to remember. But just for society, just to say, don't allow the external validation to cause you to forget who you are
Mm.
as a woman and allowing your body to go through those natural changes, right? Because guess what? After that cycle passes, doesn't that pimple disappear? It disappears. But guess what? When we're picking at it, now we're creating something more than, and that's what keeps us again in that, what I call the stress skin cycle loop. We get stressed out about a particular thing. We go look to address it. It's not working. We get to fidgeting and picking with it, and then we create a bigger problem.
Yes.
But if someone, picks up one of our products for the first time and thinks, wait, why does my body feel like that? And what does it need? That is the win. And that's what I want them to feel. Not just a clear complexion, but a more conscious relationship with themselves,
Yes.
right? But on a bigger scale, I want to prove that a Black woman founder with no industry background, no investor, no blueprint can build a methodology that changes how an entire category thinks about wellness, right? Aroma somatic is not a product line, it is a framework. Right? And I need to make that clear because I think people sometimes can approach it just as a status quo with every other product. But it's like, no,
Right.
this is slow, intentional living in a fast paced ebb and flow so that one of my taglines, so you can bloom at your best despite life's demands. That means you're blossoming. you're growing despite what's going out because you're doing your own watering and you're taking care of yourself again, regardless of what's going on outside. And I want it to be taught, I want it to be studied, and I want it to be built upon long after I'm done with building it myself, because the world doesn't need what I want to say more skincare. We have enough on the market. It's very, very oversaturated. And I had been told that since the beginning, like, girl, you sure you want to be in this? Because it is very oversaturated. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, nah, I'm building something different. Just give me a minute. I gotta use the right messaging to get people to understand what it is that we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the world just needs more honesty about what we are actually carrying. Lotus Spider own my product carry. And the product's brave enough to meet us there. That is what I'm doing. And that is what I want to leave.
Thank you for sharing that and sharing your vision with us and being so open today with our interview about your journey and what aromasomatic, your framework, what it is, just about being intentional with ourselves and caring for
Yes.
ourselves, which is something that I push thoroughly. I thank you so much for today. I truly appreciate it. Until next time, everyone, be well.